There are questions that follow you even in the quiet moments. Questions you don't talk about. Questions you don't want to admit. Questions that appear when the room gets silent and the pace of life slows down just enough for your thoughts to catch up with you. Questions like, why do I feel fear even when nothing is going wrong? Why does anxiety rise when I should feel safe? Why do I feel exposed, even when I know God exists? You felt that tension before. The pressure that comes from nowhere, the heaviness you can't explain, the sense that something unseen is after your peace. You try to dismiss it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. But deep down, you know it's more than that. Because there's a world beyond what your eyes can see, and your soul knows it. There are attacks you can't name. There are fears that don't attach themselves to any event. There are anxieties that rise without a trigger. There is a spiritual weight pressing on you, even on calm days. And the hardest question of all, the one you almost never speak out loud. If God protects me, why don't I feel protected? Psalm 91 was written for people who wrestle with this exact tension, for people who believe in God but still feel unsafe, for people who love God but still feel vulnerable, for people who pray but still feel exposed. You see, there's a difference between believing in God and dwelling in Him, between knowing He exists and living close enough to Him that His presence becomes your refuge. Most Christians don't dwell in God. They visit Him. They come when they're scared. They come when everything collapses. They come when anxiety hits. They come when life spirals. But the promise of Psalm 91 is not for visitors. It's for residents, for those who stay, for those who remain, for those who choose closeness over convenience, intimacy over independence, proximity over spiritual distance. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. That word, dwell, confronts the way most believers live. Because dwelling is not running to God when you're afraid. Dwelling is living near Him when you're not. Dwelling is not praying when panic hits. Dwelling is walking with Him before the panic comes. Dwelling is not coming to God as a last resort. It's coming to Him as your first home. Fear reveals distance. Anxiety exposes disconnection. Vulnerability shows you who you've been walking with or who you haven't. And maybe that's why you've been feeling this way lately. Not because you're in danger, but because your soul has wandered away from the shelter it was meant to stay under. Somewhere along the path, without even realizing it, you stepped out from under the shadow of the Almighty. And the farther you walk from that shadow, the louder fear becomes. Fear is not always the voice of the enemy. Sometimes it's the echo of distance. It's the soul crying out for the presence it was created to dwell in. You can build the safest life in the world and still feel vulnerable. You can have money, routine, discipline, success, friendships, stability, structure, and still not feel safe. Because human safety is fragile. Human stability is temporary. Human protection is an illusion in a world filled with things you cannot see. You can lock every door, but you can't lock out spiritual pressure. You can install alarms, but you can't detect the traps set against your peace. You can control your schedule, but you can't control the unseen realm. There is no earthly preparation that can guard you from spiritual realities. And this is where Psalm 91 becomes more than poetry. It becomes revelation. There is a kind of protection that only exists inside the presence of God. And you cannot experience it from a distance. You've been trying to feel safe while living outside the shelter. You've been hoping for peace while walking far from the one who gives it. You've been seeking protection without seeking presence. And that disconnect is the reason your soul feels exposed. The shadow of the Almighty only falls on those who stand close enough for it to cover them. Being close to God is not about emotion, not about goosebumps, not about tears during worship. It is about remaining, staying, dwelling, refusing to walk alone for even a day. You've been living with human strength in a spiritual world. You've been using human protection in a realm dominated by unseen forces. You've been trying to quiet spiritual fear with mental logic. You've been trying to silence spiritual threats with human reasoning. But the world you fight is not physical. Your enemies are not made of flesh. Your battles are not psychological only. Your fears are not imaginary. Your anxieties are not random. There is a dimension your eyes cannot see, but your soul feels every single day. And Psalm 91 exposes a truth that shakes every believer who reads it honestly. Your safety is not found in what surrounds you. Your safety is found in who you stay close to. This is why the world is filled with anxious Christians. Because proximity is protection, and distance is vulnerability. When you drift from God, your spirit senses it before your mind does. When you wander, fear fills the space left behind. When you stop dwelling, your peace slowly dissolves, not because God punishes distance, but because distance removes you from the shelter He provides. Think about it like this. A shadow doesn't chase you. You step into it, and you stay there. You cannot walk miles away from a tree and then wonder why its shade no longer covers you. In the same way, you cannot walk through life far from God and wonder why fear has grown louder. Your soul is telling you something every time anxiety rises. You are living too far from the presence you were designed to dwell in. But here's the good news hidden inside this confrontation. God is not pushing you away. He is pulling you closer. The fear you've been feeling is not abandonment, it's invitation. It's God calling your heart back under His wings, back into His presence, back into intimacy, back into the shelter your soul has been searching for without knowing it. And maybe that's why you're here, listening to this message, because something inside you knows you can't keep living this way. Half in the presence, half out. Half trusting God, half protecting yourself, half surrendered, half controlling everything. There's a part of you longing for the safety you've never truly felt, not temporary calm, but lasting refuge, not emotional relief, but spiritual covering. Not human security, but divine shelter. You're exhausted from building walls that don't work. You're tired from trying to be your own protector. You're drained from carrying fears you were never meant to carry alone. And Psalm 91 is God saying to you, come home, come dwell in me. My presence is the place your soul has been looking for. Before we continue, if this message is hitting you deeply, hold on to it. Don't scroll past it. Don't let it fade. Sometimes one reminder is enough to pull you back into the presence that can truly protect you. If staying near God is something you want to pursue more intentionally, consider subscribing. Not as a transaction, but as a commitment to keep your spirit connected to what strengthens you. Now breathe and stay with me. Because everything you've ever feared, every invisible attack you've ever sensed, every moment of anxiety you couldn't explain, Psalm 91 will reveal what has been happening behind the scenes of your life. There is a part of Psalm 91 that almost everyone reads, but very few actually understand. A phrase that sounds poetic, mystical, mysterious, yet it reveals the greatest spiritual reality a believer can ever enter. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Most people hear that and imagine something symbolic, a metaphor, a comforting expression, a pretty line. But the secret place is not poetry. It is a location, a realm, a spiritual atmosphere, a dimension of intimacy with God where fear cannot survive and danger cannot penetrate. It is the safest place in the universe, but almost no one enters it. Not because it's hidden from you, but because it's hidden inside you. And the secret place begins with one truth. You can be near God and far from Him at the same time. You can go to church and still not dwell in Him. You can pray and still not dwell in Him. You can read scripture and still not dwell in Him. You can talk about God all day and still not dwell in Him. Dwelling is not about information. It's about habitation. It's not about what you know. It's about where your heart stays. When scripture speaks of dwelling, it is speaking about constant proximity, not moments of emotion, not spiritual visits, not occasional encounters. Dwelling means God becomes the environment of your soul, your atmosphere, your home, your first instinct, your reflex, your resting place, your hiding place, your place of belonging, your place of identity, your place of safety, your place of peace. You don't run to it. You live in it. You don't enter it when you're afraid. You remain there so fear never wins. The secret place is not an escape. It is a position. And when you understand this, something inside you shifts. You start realizing that the fear you've been fighting isn't because God abandoned you. It's because you have been living outside the place where His covering is felt. Fear is a sign of distance, not danger. Anxiety is a sign that you're walking through life without staying in the presence you were designed to depend on. But when you dwell, when God becomes your atmosphere, something changes inside you. Something unexplainable. Something that doesn't fit into human language. Fear begins to suffocate. Anxiety begins to lose its grip. The mind begins to calm. The heart begins to find rest. And a supernatural peace begins to spread through you like light entering a dark room. Because fear cannot breathe where God dwells. There is a difference between entering a room and living in it. Most believers enter God's presence like entering a hotel lobby. A place you pass through, not a place you belong to. You visit it. You enjoy it. You feel comfort there, but you don't stay. You leave the presence and walk back into your own strength. You leave the presence and return to control. You leave the presence and return to overthinking. You leave the presence and return to self-defense. Then you wonder why fear finds you again. Because the secret place is not a moment you feel, it's a position you hold. Think about this. You don't charge your phone and leave it unplugged for weeks expecting it to survive, yet that's how most people treat their spirit. They recharge for a moment, then live disconnected afterward, and wonder why they're drained again. The secret place is not a charger. It is a permanent power source. Dwelling is not isolation. It's alignment. Many people think dwelling in God means withdrawing from life, hiding, escaping, detaching from responsibility. It's the opposite. Dwelling means carrying the presence with you into everything you do. You walk with Him in the routine. You speak with Him in the mundane. You acknowledge Him in small thoughts. You turn your heart toward Him in micro moments. You keep Him close even when your hands are busy. You let Him sit in the room with you even when you're silent. Dwelling is not running away from life. It's inviting God into your life so deeply that nothing can pull you out of His presence. The secret place is not a closet. It's a posture. You can stand in a crowd and be hidden in God. You can be around chaos and still carry peace inside you. You can face storms and still remain untouched in your spirit. Because dwelling is not about where your body is. It's about where your soul rests. Fear grows louder when the secret place grows empty. Every time fear appears without reason, it is a sign. Your heart wandered. Every time anxiety tightens its grip, it is a sign. Your soul stepped out from under the shadow. Every time your thoughts spiral, it is a sign. You've been trying to live without covering. You may not have noticed it happening. Distance from God rarely happens suddenly. It happens in small steps. A busy week, an overloaded schedule, a few days without real prayer, moments of distraction, a drifting mind, a tired spirit, a slow slide away from intimacy. None of it feels dramatic. None of it feels dangerous. But your soul knows. Your spirit knows. Your peace knows. Your fear knows. Something in you senses when you're no longer dwelling. Because when you stop dwelling in God, you start dwelling in something else. Stress, fear, pressure, uncertainty, self-protection, human strength, human logic, human insecurity. And these things were never meant to be your home. Exhaustion becomes your home when God's presence stops being your dwelling place. God is not asking you to visit. He is inviting you to stay. Psalm 91 is not a command. It's an invitation. God is not shouting, "Come dwell in me." He is whispering, "You were never safe outside of me. Come home." You don't come to the secret place like a tourist. You come like a child returning to a father who never stopped opening the door. The world has taught you to stand on your own. God is teaching you to stay under His covering. The world told you that independence makes you strong. God says that intimacy makes you unbreakable. The world told you to build walls. God says to stand under His wings. The world taught you to fight alone. God taught you to dwell. This is the secret place, remaining where God is, until what scares you can't survive the closeness. Closeness is not a feeling. It's a decision. Let this confront you gently but honestly. You don't have to feel close to God to be close to Him. Feelings are waves. Presence is truth. Intimacy is commitment. You stay close by choosing to stay close, by returning, by resting, by remembering, by breathing deeply and turning your heart back toward Him, by pausing and whispering, "Lord, I'm here." By letting Him be part of your inner world again, by giving Him access to your fear, by letting Him guard you instead of guarding yourself. The secret place is not for the perfect, it's for the desperate, for the humble, for the exhausted, for the ones who want God more than they want control. A soft moment before we continue. If this is speaking to you, if you feel something in your spirit pulling you closer to God, don't ignore it. Closeness is not built in grand gestures. It's built in small decisions that echo eternity. And if you want to keep walking through scripture like this, in a way that confronts and awakens you, consider subscribing. It keeps you connected to the messages that keep you near the presence that protects you. Stay with me. Because what happens next in this chapter will open your eyes to the battles you never saw and the protection that has been surrounding you your entire life. There are things that happened around you that you never knew about. There are dangers that never reached you. There are traps that never touched you. There are attacks that never landed. There are plans formed against you that dissolved before you even sensed a threat. And the strangest part is, you probably assumed your life was normal. Your days were uneventful. Your routines were predictable. But that's because you didn't see what God blocked. Psalm 91 pulls back the veil and shows you a world your eyes could never perceive. A world where your peace has been hunted, your heart has been targeted, your mind has been tested, and your soul has been surrounded, not once, not twice, but constantly. You have been living in the middle of a spiritual battlefield your entire life. even on the days that felt quiet and harmless. And here's the truth most believers never face. You are not afraid because you're weak. You are afraid because you can feel the war your eyes cannot see. Your spirit senses movements in the unseen. Your heart picks up what your mind cannot identify. You feel pressure without a source, fear without an event, anxiety without a storyline. You think something is wrong with you, but something has always been wrong around you. And God has been standing between you and the very things that were assigned to destroy you. Psalm 91 isn't exaggeration. It isn't symbolic language. It isn't poetic imagination. It is God describing the unseen reality of your life and His involvement in it. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. If you read that too quickly, you miss everything. A snare is a trap set by an enemy long before the victim arrives. It is placed silently, intentionally, strategically. A snare is not chaos. It is premeditated destruction. And the scripture says God saves you from it, meaning there were traps with your name on them, moments where the enemy planned to break you, situations designed to crush your faith, people meant to wound your heart, circumstances that would have taken you farther than you meant to go, but God dismantled the trap before you ever saw it. The reason you escaped situations you never knew were dangerous is because God intervened before you even arrived. There were relationships that would have destroyed your identity, but God closed the door. There were opportunities that would have ruined your future, but God blocked them. There were places you wanted to be but couldn't enter, and now you understand why. There were people you lost, and now you realize they were never meant to walk with you. There were attacks that never touched you, because God never let them get close. You think your life is simple. It isn't. Your peace has been protected by a presence you never noticed. This is why verse 11 shakes the soul when you read it slowly. He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Not in some ways, not in your spiritual ways, not in your religious moments, in all your ways. Meaning, when you walk, when you drive, when you sleep, when you travel, when you are distracted, when you are careless, when you are tired, when you are tempted, when you are blind to danger, when you are unaware of what is happening around you. God commands protection over you. You didn't ask for it. He assigned it. You didn't earn it. He initiated it. You didn't feel it, but it was there. There are things your anxiety felt, but your eyes couldn't see. There are moments your spirit sensed, but your logic dismissed. Because your soul knows the spiritual world is real, even when your mind tries to explain it away. Every believer has experienced this without realizing it. A sudden heaviness in the air, a feeling of being watched, a pressure on the mind, a strange fear at night, a thought that isn't yours, a darkness that tries to settle over you. Most people call it stress. God calls it warfare. And Psalm 91 explains exactly what has been happening. God has been shielding you from things designed to break you. The pitfalls you avoided because God pulled you away. The relationships that ended abruptly ended because God rescued you. The danger you sensed internally, you sensed because God was warning you. The accident that never happened didn't happen because angels prevented it. The breakdown that almost came because the enemy pushed for it, but heaven intervened. There is a reason you are still alive. A reason you didn't fall apart when everything around you collapsed. A reason some nights didn't end the way they could have. A reason some seasons didn't destroy your faith. A reason your mind didn't break under all the pressure. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't strength. It wasn't survival. It wasn't randomness. It was protection. Protection you didn't feel, protection you didn't see, protection you didn't understand, protection you didn't even know you needed. You have never lived one unprotected day in your life. Only days where you didn't recognize the protection. There's a part of Psalm 91 that people skip because it sounds too surreal. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. This is not exaggeration. This is not metaphor. This is not ancient imagery. This is spiritual mathematics. The world collapses around those who walk alone, but those who dwell in God stand where others fall. Why? Because proximity creates protection. The closer you are to God, the less access fear has to your spirit. The less access anxiety has to your mind, the less access darkness has to your soul, the less access the enemy has to your life. Some people are constantly attacked not because God abandoned them, but because they live far from His covering. Distance is expensive, and fear will always charge you interest. Anxiety will always collect payment. Spiritual vulnerability will always demand a cost. But when you dwell, when you stay near, when you refuse to leave the presence, everything changes. The same world stays dangerous, but you become unreachable. You walk through spiritual storms in peace. You move through threats with confidence. You rest under the wings of a God who has already defeated the enemy hunting your mind. Fear doesn't disappear because the battle stops. Fear disappears because the presence of God becomes stronger than anything fighting you. There is a line in Psalm 91 that feels almost too intimate to read without trembling. His faithfulness will be your shield. Your shield is not your discipline, not your strength, not your intelligence, not your experience, not your upbringing, not your planning, not your emotional resilience. Your shield is His faithfulness, not your faithfulness, His. He shields you because He is faithful, even when you are not. He protects you because He is good, even when you are inconsistent. He guards you because He loves you, even when you forget Him. You have been living in a world where invisible dangers walk freely, yet none have been allowed to destroy you. Not because you were strong, but because God kept you near, even when you didn't realize how close He was. Before we continue, breathe. Let this truth sink into the deepest part of you. You are not safe because you're careful. You're safe because God is covering you. If this message is opening your eyes, if it's awakening something in your spirit, you can stay close. Consider subscribing, not for the channel, but because sometimes the right reminder at the right moment keeps your heart under the right shadow. And now, stay with me. Because what comes next is where Psalm 91 becomes personal. Not just protection around you, but protection within you. The kind of covering that changes how you walk through every day of your life. There comes a moment in Psalm 91 where the entire tone shifts. Up until this point, you've been hearing about danger, about traps, about invisible battles and unseen attacks. But suddenly, the chapter stops talking about the enemy and starts talking about God Himself. Not as an idea, not as a theological concept, not as a distant figure in the heavens, but as someone who steps into your world so closely that He becomes the shelter you've been searching for without even knowing it. You've spent most of your life thinking protection is something God gives, a blessing, a covering, a promise, something external, something He places around you. But Psalm 91 reveals something far deeper and far more intimate. God doesn't just give protection, He becomes protection. He becomes the shield, the refuge, the covering, the shadow, the barrier. And the moment you understand this, everything about your relationship with fear changes. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Most people read that line and treat it like symbolism. But there is nothing symbolic about a God who chooses proximity as his method of protection. There is nothing symbolic about a God who leans over you, nothing symbolic about a God who shields you with his very presence, nothing symbolic about a God who says, "The safest place in your life is not behind something I built, it's beneath me." You've imagined God guarding you from far away, like someone watching over you from a distance. But the truth is far more beautiful. He guards you by coming closer than whatever threatens you. The danger never reached you because it had to get through him first, and it couldn't. If you could see the moments he stepped in front of you, you would realize you've never taken a single breath alone. You've never walked into a room without being surrounded. You've never driven your car without being overshadowed. You've never gone to sleep without someone standing guard. You didn't survive because the threat missed you. You survived because it struck him instead. And that is the kind of protection most believers never grasp. You've been trying to protect yourself with human strategies, with caution, preparation, emotional walls, independence, hyper-alertness, trying to anticipate every possible danger. But all of these things exhaust you because they were never meant to defend you from the world you live in. Human strength cannot fight spiritual threats. Human wisdom cannot discern spiritual traps. Human effort cannot stop spiritual attacks. Security built out of fear is not security at all. It's bondage. You keep trying to be strong because the world taught you that strength is what keeps you safe. But Scripture teaches the opposite. Intimacy keeps you safe. Closeness keeps you safe. Proximity to God keeps you safe. You don't need to be stronger. You need to be closer. You don't need more discipline. You need more dependence. You don't need tighter emotional walls. You need a thicker presence of God around your life. When you finally understand that your shield is not made of your effort, but of God's faithfulness, a shift begins. You no longer feel responsible for defending yourself against every possible scenario. You no longer feel the urge to control outcomes. You no longer walk through life bracing yourself for impact. You no longer constantly rehearse what could go wrong. You no longer interpret every silence as a threat. You begin to breathe again, because refuge is not something you build, it's someone you hide in. Think about the moments where fear suddenly appears for no reason. You've had those. The moments where you're sitting in a peaceful room and suddenly your heart tightens. The moments where you're trying to sleep and a heaviness enters the atmosphere. The moments where you're surrounded by people but feel spiritually exposed. You assume it's stress. You assume it's overthinking. You assume it's your mind playing tricks on you. But what if some of those moments weren't psychological? What if they were spiritual? What if your sensitivity to fear is actually sensitivity to distance, the distance between you and the presence that protects you? Because fear grows loud when God becomes distant, not because he leaves you, but because you walked out from under his shadow. He never stopped being your refuge. You simply stopped dwelling. And as you drifted, fear found room to breathe again. God is not angry about that. He's not disappointed in you. He's not keeping score. He's inviting you closer because he knows you can't protect yourself from enemies you can't see. He knows you can't win battles you don't recognize. He knows you can't shield your heart with tools made out of fear. He knows how tired you are from trying to stay strong in a world your strength wasn't designed to face. And this is why the promise in Psalm 91 carries such weight. His faithfulness will be your shield, not your devotion, not your discipline, not your understanding, not your consistency. His reliability, his nature, His character, His steadfastness, His presence. You are protected because He is faithful, not because you are flawless. Even on the days you wandered, He stayed. Even on the days you doubted, He guarded. Even on the days you forgot Him, He remembered you. Even on the days you fell apart, He held everything together. You don't survive the unseen battles of your life because you are spiritually strong. You survive because God is fiercely loyal. There have been moments where danger moved toward you and never arrived. Moments where the enemy crafted an assignment and it never unfolded. Moments where you should have fallen but didn't. Moments where anxiety should have consumed you but couldn't. Moments where heartbreak should have broken you but somehow didn't shatter you entirely. And if you ever wondered why, this is why. Someone was covering you. You weren't spared because you were careful. You were spared because God was close. You weren't protected because you predicted the threat. You were protected because He stood in front of you before the threat even formed. You can stop fighting shadows. You can stop preparing for imaginary disasters. You can stop overanalyzing every silence. You can stop assuming danger is always near. You can stop trying to guard your heart with fear instead of faith. You can finally rest. Because your safety was never meant to come from your strategy. It was meant to come from your shepherd. And if this is speaking to you, let it settle. Don't brush it off. Don't move past it quickly. Let this truth remind you that the presence of God is not just a comfort, it is your protection. And if you want to keep walking through Scripture in this way, staying near the voice that strengthens you, consider subscribing. Not as a favor to a channel, but as a way of keeping your spirit close to the truth that keeps you safe. Breathe. Let your shoulders drop. You can rest now, because God has been covering you long before you even realized how much you needed Him to. There's a moment in Psalm 91 that feels almost too personal to read without slowing down. A moment where the language of protection stops sounding like a promise and starts sounding like a heartbeat. It's the place where God is no longer described as a shelter. He becomes one. The moment you realize the safest place in your entire life is not behind something He gives you, but beneath who He is. Under His wings, you will find refuge. You've read that before, maybe dozens of times, maybe hundreds. But have you ever stopped long enough to imagine it? Have you ever pictured what it means to be hidden beneath the wings of God? Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but spiritually, completely, entirely covered. You spend so much of your life trying to shield yourself, trying to predict danger, trying to avoid pain, trying to build walls around your heart, trying to stay alert, trying not to get hurt again, trying to be strong enough to not collapse, trying to think ahead so fear won't swallow you. But what if the strength you're searching for doesn't come from looking ahead, but from drawing closer? What if the safety you crave isn't found in controlling outcomes, but in staying close enough to God that the outcome cannot destroy you? What if the protection you've been begging for is not a place, but a person? Psalm 91 ends by showing you something shocking. God is not calling you into safety. He is calling you into closeness, because closeness is safety. And the entire chapter leads you toward one breathtaking truth. Distance is dangerous. Proximity is protection. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Because you are near Him. You're not safe because the world is gentle. You're safe because God is present. You're not protected because danger disappears. You're protected because God draws you beneath the shadow that danger cannot enter. Everything changes when you begin to understand that fear is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wandering. Fear grows loud when your heart drifts from the one who who silences it. Fear becomes overwhelming when you start living outside the presence that was designed to be your home. Fear becomes suffocating when you try to fight battles you were never meant to face alone. But when you come near, truly near, something supernatural happens inside you. Fear begins to lose oxygen, anxiety starts to wither, the weight on your chest starts to lift, the tension in your mind begins to loosen. Because proximity to God creates an atmosphere where fear cannot breathe. The reason the enemy wants you distant is because he knows he cannot touch you when you are close. Darkness cannot enter where God dwells. Fear cannot speak where his presence rests. Anxiety cannot suffocate a heart hidden beneath his wings. The enemy can only attack what steps outside the shelter, so he doesn't try to defeat you. He tries to distance you. The entire battle for your peace has always been a battle for your proximity. You think you're fighting fear, but what you're really fighting is distance. You think you're fighting anxiety, but what you're really fighting is distraction that pulls you away from God. You think you're fighting uncertainty, but the real battle is keeping your life anchored under the shadow of the Almighty. Because once you dwell there, once you abide there, everything else loses its power. And this is where the chapter reaches its climax. God speaks. Not David, not Moses, not a psalmist, not a narrator, not a prayer. God himself enters the conversation, and he declares over you.
Because he loves me, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.
Read it one more time, because it's not advice, it's not poetry, it's not inspiration, it's a promise. And not just any promise, a promise tied directly to your proximity. I will rescue him. I will protect him. I will be with him. I will show him my salvation. Every blessing mentioned depends on one thing: you drawing near, you choosing him, you dwelling in him, you staying close enough that your life becomes hidden in his shadow. God is not calling you to a moment of faith. He is calling you to a lifestyle of communion. He is calling you back into nearness, back into the secret place, back into the shelter that holds your mind together, back into the presence that protects your destiny, back into the intimacy that keeps fear from shaping your decisions. Somewhere along the way, life pulled you outward, stress pulled you outward, responsibilities pulled you outward, anxiety pulled you outward, disappointment pulled you outward, pain pulled you outward, and without noticing it, you drifted. You didn't leave God, but you left the place where your soul feels him. You left the closeness where fear loses its voice. You left the secret place where peace becomes oxygen. You left the shadow where your spirit knows how to breathe. And Psalm 91 becomes God's whisper to you: come back, come close, dwell again, rest under my wings. You are safest when you are near me. You don't need a new strategy for fear. You need a new proximity to God. You don't need more courage. You need more presence. You don't need more strength. You need more surrender. You don't need to fight harder. You need to stay closer. Because everything you want, peace, stability, clarity, protection, is found not in a place outside you, but in the presence that surrounds you. Before we finish, pause for a moment. Let your heart listen. Let your spirit breathe. You know this message is speaking to something deep inside you, something you've been ignoring, something you've been numbing, something you've been too busy to face. And if this video has spoken to you, If something in you is waking up, softening, returning, don't leave this moment untouched. Don't shrug it off. Don't let the enemy dull what God is stirring. If you want to keep walking through the Bible like this, raw, confrontational, cinematic, honest, stay close. Subscribe. Not for the channel, for your spirit, for your walk, for your relationship with God. And if this message pierced something inside you, declare it out loud or in the comments, "I choose to dwell." Let those words become your turning point, your re-entry, your surrender, your homecoming. Because the safest place you will ever be, the safest place your soul will ever know, is the presence of the God who covers you.